Okay, so today I brought some things with me that I want to use. One more. And I'm not going to leave these here because it'll be my luck that these will fall. So, props. So I brought things with me that I want to use today. So I have music that I want to play. Okay, I'm going to push play on that one. And I have light that I want to shine. So I'm going to turn that on. They're not working. You got to plug it in. You got to plug it in. I did that on purpose to show a point. Do you have things that you brought with you? Do you have music that you want to play? Things that you brought to this life experience or your soul's expression? Do you have light that you want to shine in the world? And are you plugged in? Are you plugged into your source, your connection to power? It doesn't work if you're not plugged in. So that's what I want to explore with you today. So we kicked off a new theme. We've been studying the 12 powers that our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, created a system. He called it the 12 powers of man. The idea that each of us has 12 creative centers within us, 12 disciplines. The work corresponds to the 12 disciples, the 12 months of the year, but that there are these powers within us that we can develop, that we can plug into, that we can bring forth to create life and more life abundantly for ourselves. So today we are exploring power. So here's how we're going to do this today. I'm going to start off with the definition of power so we get common ground of what we're talking about. Then I'm going to introduce my main idea. I'm so excited about this idea. When I heard it, I knew that I wanted to talk about it, and it's been a while coming, so I'm very excited about this concept of going to the Father. And then I'll tie it all together, look at what it means for all of us, talk a little bit about superheroes and what they have to do with anything. So I will say, if you're here for the first time, please come back. We have different speakers that have different personalities. You'll develop your favorites. And I invite you to just try on what I'm saying and see how it fits. And if it doesn't fit, like Carrie said, we're not going to keep it in a closet. We'll get something else that might look better with our complexion or that might feel better. But I invite you to open and be open to what I'm going to share with you, because not to be biased, but it's powerful. And if we take it and use it and try it on and practice it and put it to work. I know the great late Unity minister, Reverend Johnny Coleman, would say, Johnny is a woman, by the way, an African-American lady that was a Unity teacher that developed Christ Universal Temple in Detroit, powerhouse. She would say it works if you work it. Like any good old diet or exercise program, right? It works if you work it. So, we good? That's what we're doing today. So, let's look at the definition of power. According to Charles Fillmore's book, The Revealing Word, it's a metaphysical Bible dictionary. You can kind of look up a lot of different words and it gives you a metaphysical definition for different words that we use in Unity. Power is man's innate control over his thoughts and feelings. Her thoughts and feelings, her innate control. A quickening from on high must precede realization of dominion. Acts 1 verse 8 says, "Ye shall receive power when the Holy Spirit is come upon you." God is all power, thus all things are possible with him. It also says, "The mind and body of man have power to transform energy from one plane of consciousness to another." In mind, power is increased through exalted ideas. These show us the relation between the word without and the mind within, and we find that they are parallel. Whatever you see in the external, you may be assured it has its parallel in mind. The one thing to understand is that whatever we see without is controlled by something within. It's an important point. Whatever we see without is controlled by something within. This law, once revealed to the mind, clears up the whole of creation and shows how God works. Man is the power of God in action. To man or woman is given the highest power in the universe, the conscious power of thought. So I'm laying the foundation. It'll become important in a second. This divine energy will surge through us as we erase negative thoughts from consciousness and become one with God mind. Becoming one with God mind. How many of you have heard of an African American preacher? He was a televangelist, prosperity preacher called Reverend Ike. Anybody heard of Reverend Ike? Okay. He was born as Frederick Joseph Eikencotter II, the son of a Baptist preacher. He founded his own church in South Carolina. He went on to do some faith-based healing in Boston before he settled in New York in 1966. He established a church in an old movie theater in Harlem. We should consider some things like that, right? Places you wouldn't think of to become a church, like in Houston where they have the stadium that they converted in church and they fill up with people. So Reverend Ike, on the outside of the marquee for the church, his full last name is Eikencotter. It was too narrow to fit all of his last name, so he shortened it to Reverend Ike. So that's how he became Reverend Ike. He built a congregation of about 5,000 parishioners during his peak popularity in the 70s. He reached an audience of about 2.5 million people. His sermons were broadcasted on radio, on TV, almost 2,000 radio stations. He had motivational tapes, books, magazines, and videos. Now, Reverend Ike was somewhat controversial. He became a multi-millionaire, and some considered him flamboyant. He was known for wearing flashy clothes and his love for expensive cars, especially Rolls Royces. He had mansions and a bunch of Rolls Royces. And he was one of the first black preachers to preach prosperity and to preach a different way to look at the Bible. And so people thought that he was taking advantage of others to, dress the way he dressed and to have not one, but a whole bunch of Rolls Royces in his garage. The thing about Reverend Ike that I got excited about is that Reverend Ike was a metaphysician. He really was a metaphysician. He preached mind science and positive mind psychology. He taught that instead of looking for a God in the sky, that we instead look for the divine power within us. So I heard a recording once of Reverend Ike where he spoke about this idea that he called Going to the Father. And I just loved it. It was so reverent and holy for me. Going to the Father. He said that if he had something troubling him or some sort of problem, that he would go to the Father about it. And as he explained, he would go to first cause. First cause. The source of our power in our thoughts and consciousness. So if I wanted my CD player to work or my lamp to work, and I have music that I want to share, I have gifts and talents that I brought with me into this expression, the real power is going to first cause. Going to the source, connecting with the source of our power. Everybody good so far? Awesome. So let's look at first cause for a second. Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind defines first cause in this way: that from which everything comes. The cause of all is made manifest on any plane. That which comes first. The first in any creative series, the life and back of all things. The notion of a first cause, that is something that causes all other things and events, but itself is uncaused. So it can affect and cause other things, but it doesn't change itself. It can cause other things to move and to come into materiality and expression, but itself is unmoved. That sharing and outpicturing does not take away the fullness of its presence and its power. So that is the idea and the level of God mind that I'm suggesting that we can put into practice, going to the Father, going to that level of God consciousness within ourselves and for ourselves. I'll tell you about another person who was also a great metaphysician and well-known person in New Thought, Neville Goddard. How many of you have heard of him? Neville Goddard. I love Neville Goddard. He can be really deep, just like Ernest Holmes can be really, really deep. Neville Goddard was a New Thought author and mystic who wrote on the Bible and esotericism. He is considered to be one of the pioneers of what's called the law of assumption. So now we all in this day and age of technology and all this information that's readily available, we can enroll today in YouTube University. And you can look up Reverend Ike, Neville Goddard, or any of these things and just explore for yourselves and see what fits for you. Reverend Ike studied Neville Goddard's work. And if you're familiar with Wayne Dyer's book, you'll see it when you believe it. That's based on Neville Goddard as well. Neville taught that the first cause substance is consciousness. That consciousness is the one and only reality. Emmett Fox said the same thing, that life is consciousness. What appears to us as circumstances, conditions, and material objects is really only the product of our own consciousness. It is to that consciousness that we must return, going to the Father, plugging ourselves in to the power. Neville says that there is not a variety of substances, but a variety of arrangements of the same substance. So there appears to be multiplicity, but we know that we say that there is one power and one presence. It can express itself in different arrangements, but it's the same source. It's the same presence. Different arrangements of the same mind, which is God mind. So then, health, wealth, and success are not created per se, You don't have to go out and make them. We rearrange ourselves and they naturally outpicture and manifest. So going to the Father means that we become like-minded with Christ by entering into absolute mind. How do we do that? We fix our attention so powerfully on a certain idea, we keep the realization until it is done. We rest in the conviction that our ideal will appear in manifestation. So we hold it, we do not waver, and we keep it until it is done. So I'm a big fan of the comic book movies, like the DC Comics and the Marvel movies, the Superman and the Batman and the Captain America. I love those movies. Wonder Woman and Iron Man. The superheroes have great power. Some were born with them, and some came to have them with some weird way, bit by a spider, some type of being caught in a reactor, some science experiment that didn't go quite right. They go through a transformation, these superheroes do, sometimes unknowingly unlocking a power that they didn't know they had. I went to movies a couple of weeks ago. Won't give away too many spoiler works, but it's called Knights of the Zodiac, where there's this young lady. The couple of the main characters were teenagers, and she was believed to have been the reincarnation of a goddess. And this other teenager, this young man, was going to be one of her protectors, one of her knights. So he was fighting on the underground circuit, and during one of his fights, he unknowingly taps into a cosmic power that he didn't know he had. And so then, because he tapped into this other power, other people noticed it, and then, of course, people came at him and was chasing him and all that kind of stuff. He went through a training period to develop his talents. And at one point in the movie, he is resisting. And the person that's training him says, there was this armor that he was sort of kind of working for. And she says, the armor will accept you when you believe. Do we have gifts and strengths that we don't quite walk into them until we believe and we accept them and we embrace them? Just like the superheroes that have to go through some type of training period, they become stronger and faster and more in tune with their hearing when they accept their gifts. They become more powerful when they accept their gifts. Spider-Man, when he finally accepts his gifts and he stops fighting with himself, and all the other superheroes, after they accept what happened to them and they accept these gifts, then they can use them for the benefit of others, to help protect others, to help save others, to be stronger for other people. How is that like us? When we tune in to the God mind that is our source as first cause, when we look to that first, before we look to the news, before we look to the diagnosis, before we look to the bank statement, when we believe that we are one with the Father, that we are a child of God. Myrtle Fillmore said with her illness that I am a child of God, I do not inherit sickness. And she healed herself. And because she healed herself, Charles healed himself with an injury, a childhood injury with his leg. They healed themselves. The neighbors started coming, and they wanted to get a piece of that. I want some of that power. I want to be able to do that in my own lives. And once the word spread, other people started coming to them. I want some of that power. I want to plug into that. So we too have superpowers, powers that we are born with. And if there is light that we want to shine, if there's music that we want to play, if we have a song in us, something that we can use for the good of ourselves, a power that we can develop within ourselves, we have to plug in. You have to connect to your source, to the truth about yourself. Now, sometimes that means unlearning a whole bunch of stuff. Sometimes that might mean turning away from what we've been told all our lives, or turning away from, there may not even be anybody telling you that anymore, but we've gotten it so good in our own head that we can do it for ourselves, right? So now we're going within. We're going to the Father. If you have anything in your life, and this is an experiment. This can be your own science superhero experiment that you can practice going to the Father in consciousness. If there's something that you want to develop, some of you, you have gifts that you're already using in the world. What else is in there? What else is Spirit speaking to you? The things that are, I remember a talk that I gave at some point that I said, Jackie, you'll love this one. What if what's in our way is the way? And I am finding that a year later, I still am working with that. The stuff that's coming up in my face right now, what if that is the way that I can connect to my source? That in the face of whatever we are dealing with, wanting to change, even the other people that we can't seem to change, and doesn't that seem to be true? Sometimes it's the other people that I wish would act right. But at the same time, the power is within me. I have to do it within myself, for myself, and it starts with your consciousness. And if you start with your consciousness and connect with the Christ, bring your mind to the level of the answer consciousness, the level of plenty consciousness, the level of health, the level of harmony and wholeness and order, and keep it there and do not waver regardless of outer appearances. When you do that, we tune in to the universe and things have a way of rearranging themselves. Testimony, anybody? Has that worked? I should see way more hands than that. Ain't y'all been coming to Unity for a long time? Yes, yes. And proof, like, don't take my word for it, try it. Try it, going to the Father, that there is a power that we can connect in, that we can tune into, and that will direct our lives. And that if we develop that power, our power within ourselves, we can be our own superhero. So in closing, I want to share this last little prop with you. So years ago, I became a runner, and I ran a whole bunch of half marathons, and I trained for a full marathon that I was doing in honor of my 40th birthday. I know I don't look 40. And during my marathon, I actually was going through a divorce. So I kept up all of my training runs, and for marathon training, you're running half marathon distances for breakfast. So divorce is going on, things going on with the kids, work is crazy stressful, and I kept at it. And I trained, and I trained. I didn't think it was possible. I was crying during runs, but I kept going. And during my races, not only would I do my races, I ran every step nonstop during every race, except the marathon. I ain't that, but. So the ladies that I ran with, one of them gave me these little socks, these little Superman socks. And look, she's fly, she's got a cape, as a symbol of strength and persistence and perseverance. So, we're all superheroes. We all have music, we all have light, we all have gifts, we all have talents. We were born with them. We still might have to stumble into some other ones of them, but we can go to the Father, stay connected with our source, our sense of Christ consciousness. And if you need to know more about what that is, there are a bunch of books that you can get. Jesus Christ Heals, Charles Fillmore is a good one. Neville Goddard's books, YouTube University, audio books. There is a lot that can help you. As you shine your light, we are all better. And so it is. Thank you.